Hello there, my name is Sixo, but more on that later, as now it's time for a brand new unboxing video. And whilst it seems like barely a day has gone by since our last FansToys new arrival, we're back at it again with FT-30B Iceman, which is their take on a masterpiece-styled air raid. So let's dive right in and take a look at this fella, shall we? FT-30B Iceman is the third release from FansToys in their unofficial Aerialbots lineup, and imagines the character known as Air Raid in masterpiece-styled form. We've already received FansToys figures depicting both Silverbolt and Skydive in this lineup, known as Maverick and Goose respectively, and they were both pretty nicely done, so it's shaping up to be a good set so far. We still have two more figures to go after this to complete the set though, and at present it's anyone's guess how they're all going to be able to combine to form the full Superion Combine mode, which will be known collectively as Aerialbot. Catchy. Air Raid's alternate form is that of an F-15 Eagle, with a predominantly black and white colour scheme. Despite it featuring mostly F-14s in the movie, FansToys are continuing to find inspiration for the names of their Aerialbot toys from the 1980s classic Top Gun, with Iceman being the main rival of protagonist Maverick. Indeed. Anyway, Iceman looks to be a pretty accurate rendition of how we knew Air Raid in the original Sunbow Transformers cartoon, and as one of the more prominent Aerialbot characters, it'll be great to see him done justice. Of course, there are several options for this character out there already, with Zeta Toys Airstrike from a few years back being the most obvious. I'm a big fan of that toy in its combined mode, but the individual bots are a little lacking to my taste, so it'll be interesting to see how FansToys compares. Oh, and last thing before we begin, today's video comes courtesy of Tier Source, so you'll find a link to their listing for this guy in the video description. The plan for today is to give you my first impression after we get that box open, and then I'll be aiming to get a full review with loads of photos up on their blog ASAP. Right then, time to take a look at Iceman. Here he is in the box, and full disclosure, I have taken a sneaky peek at this one already, as after my experience with Magnum, where I didn't have any instructions, I just wanted to make sure that it was all in the box this time, in case I needed to do a little bit of extra research first, but fortunately it seems to be the full package this time, so that's good. Right, on the box, pretty typical FansToys fare. You've got some very nice artwork here on the front, which looks really, really good, depicting Air Raid in his robot and vehicle forms. And then on the back, there we go, we've got some fairly typical toy promo shots. We've got him with Goose there, and with Maverick as well. There's Silverbolt, and he's looking pretty good. But let's go ahead and check out the contents. So quite an exciting package, this one. As I've already mentioned, I have the instructions, which is great. So look forward to reading those in a minute. And there's the character card in case you're into that kind of thing. They're all in there. And of course we have the toy in his polystyrene case, just here. And first thing I did notice, which kind of made me laugh, was that there's I think sort of relatively typical nowadays, that way up, sort of extra sheet of instructions that FansToys sometimes gives us, which I don't know, makes me slightly nervous, because there's always that feeling of like, hey, don't break this. But I'm sure it'll come in handy, so I'll just put this with the rest of the instructions. Now, let's just get the tape off the sides, just here. Slightly different, this one, and different to Magnum, certainly, which was more typical for FansToys in that it was encased wholly in polystyrene, whereas this guy, and some of their other Aerialbots so far as well, is just one side of polystyrene, bit deeper, but then with a clamshell top instead. So slightly different. It's got the usual protective layers, and then if I stand him up, there is the toy in the polystyrene, looking pretty nice, it has to be said. Strong first vibe off that one. Haven't taken him out of the polystyrene yet, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how he shapes up. Air Raid was always one of those designs that I really like, so this, fingers crossed, should be a good one. Right, there we go. Let's get him out and take a proper look. Just on there. And then we also have some accessories. So we have 2 guns. You can see those there. We'll just put those there for a second. And a spare face as well. So we'll take a look at that. And that is everything in the box. There you go. So not a hefty package by any means. 2 guns and an extra face. But, you know, how much do you really need? So yeah, those 2 guns are looking pretty good. They're identical from what I can see. I'm always a fan of having 2 guns with guys like this. Always looks cool for posing and things like that. So that's a nice element. That's the extra face just there. Shouty face. Kind of an angry, shouty face as opposed to his sort of fairly default stoic face that you get already on the toy. And yeah, he's really nicely cast in white and red and black and all the colours you would expect. Nice taste of silver there on the face, and looking pretty good. There we go. Bit of a well, at the moment, messy backpack straight out of the box. I think that might need tidying up a little bit, but we'll go ahead and take a look at that in just a minute. But yeah, first impressions in terms of the package. Yeah, I mean you don't get a lot in the box, but as I say, how much do you really need? Extra face, 2 guns, no messing. Right, and then here's his robot mode, which I have to say is looking really, really nice. I really like the white, the red, the color scheme in general is fantastic. I mean, it's what you would expect from Air Raid, but you know, certainly the way that they've done it really catches the eye. There's a really nice pearly quality to the white paint, which really sparkles in the light. Certainly quite eye-catching, and very similar to a lot of their other Aerialbots and their Stunticons. You know, there's a nice bit of translucent red plastic on the chest here. This red is quite shiny here as well, so that really sparkles and stands out, so that's good. And again, you've got that really nice pearly white just here. Some nice paint applications just here on the knees. I'm guessing that that's the landing gear in there as well, so that looks really good. You know, from a side-on view, quite tidy. I will say that the backpack looks a little bit complicated, so I'm maybe feeling slightly nervous about the transformation and having skipped through the instructions just slightly as well. We'll get to that in good time, of course. But you know, just first impression is that looks slightly fiddly in here. There's a lot of kind of panels all folded up and kind of mushed together. So it's not untidy by any means. And in terms of, you know, a backpack, that's, I think, what you would expect from a masterpiece Aerialbot, you know, a classic G1 design. So, you know, that's very much what I would have been anticipating. But certainly this kind of assemblage of different bits and bobs just looks a little bit complicated to my eye. So we'll see how it fares. That said, I have just fiddled with it slightly since getting them out of the box. And initially I felt it was going to be a bit loose and wobbly, but actually, assuming I've got it all right, it feels fairly good now. I mean, there's a little bit of give in there, but it's okay. He does feel slightly back. Yeah, there you go. Does feel slightly back heavy. I have had him sort of wobble backwards a couple of times. And indeed, you know, that whole section is obviously going to make him quite back heavy. That's the sort of nature of this design, I guess. But yeah, it feels like there's maybe just a little bit of give in those, just in those ankles slightly, that has him tipping backwards, just ever so slightly there. You know, from a back view, again, it's probably what you'd expect. This canopy section looks really, really cool. Can't wait to see him in jet mode, because I think that's looking really cool. There's a kind of nice, again, slightly sleek, pearly quality to the black. It's not just a sort of straightforward jet black, I suppose, for want of a better term. So that looks really cool. And there's certainly overall, the feels like there's a really very premium finish, which are, you know, FansToys collectors will be used to, and I'm sure we'll be looking out for. But you see it to some, you know, lesser degrees on some of their toys. I mean, you know, obviously we've got a Tesla 2.0, their Perceptor, coming up soon, but you know, that's a good example for me of a definite misstep in terms of the finish of that figure. It always felt very, you know, like a lot cheaper in hand, the quality of the plastic. This guy is the other end of that. Definitely the plastic feels good from what I can see. Definite die cast, just picking him up. You know, it's got that heft that FansToys collectors often talk about, so that's good. And certainly the finish looks spectacular as well. I mean, like, really nice. And actually, just thinking ahead, I mean, my other, I'm not going to do a comparison today, I'll save that for the full review, but my other, I guess, masterpiece style air raids that I've seen are the Jet Commander, the oversized KO of the Combiner Wars Aerialbots, and that obviously doesn't compare, but it's not really meant to. It's a very cheap product by comparison. And then, of course, Zeta Toys, if you prefer, their attempt at an air raid as well, which is nice in combined mode. I really like that toy, but in terms of the individual bots, they are a little bit lacking for my taste. So this, just purely on first impression, if you're looking for a masterpiece air raid, feels straight off the bat like it's doing the business in that regard. Yeah, he's wobbling backwards again, so hopefully that's not going to become a theme, but there you go. Just other things to note, really like the head sculpt on there. That looks superb. I guess it's not quite what I was expecting. I don't know if I would say it's a dead ringer to the cartoon, to the animation model, but certainly it's attractive all the same. It's got a little bit of a distinct face shape in there, sort of a square jawline. I don't know. Maybe it is a good look for Air Raid. I don't know. It's just not quite what I was expecting, but I still really like it all the same. So that's cool. And as I say, I mentioned it earlier, but this translucent red plastic on there looks really, really cool as well. So let's go ahead and put his guns into his hands. Fairly standard FansToys hands, kind of flat, almost, I don't know, like not awkward, but like I've always found FansToys hands to be fairly rigid, I guess would be maybe the right word. And I noted in my Magnum video that that they seem to be evolving their hand shape a little bit with some of their upcoming releases, like their Trailbreaker Outrider. So that's interesting to see, because I've never been a huge fan of FansToys hands. I mean, they do the job, definitely. Don't get me wrong. Right, just make sure he doesn't wobble backwards. Anyway, there he is with both his guns in hand. Make sure the fingers are all folded in. And yeah, this is another complaint of mine with FansToys fingers. That little back finger just there feels slightly loose. So hopefully that doesn't loosen off over time, but we'll see. Anyway, looks really good with both the guns in hand. Dual wielding, as it were. So that's really, really cool. Yeah, like that a lot, I have to say. I don't know what it is about dual wielding, dual guns for me. I don't know, just always kind of makes toys look really, really cool. In terms of posability, let's see. So we have bend up at the arm, bend forward, as you would expect. Not a whole lot going on at the elbow. Just make sure, yeah, no, just 90 degrees at the elbow, but that's fine. Obviously, you've got a wrist swivel in there and fully articulated hands, as we've said. In terms of the head, turn side to side, a little bit of up, and not a whole lot of down. Maybe just like a little bit, if you consider that kind of neutral, but like a tiny bit, but not much. But otherwise, fairly good head articulation, kind of what you would expect, I guess. But yeah, there you go. In terms of the hips, he's got hip panels, so you might need to fold those. Looks like there's one at the side as well, so fold those up and out of the way. Fairly decent at the hips, goes just a bit above 90 degrees and 90 degrees at the knee, and then a bit of ankle tilt and a little bit of forward and back on the hips, which I guess is what we're seeing when he rocks backwards a little bit as well, so that could maybe be a bit stiffer, but still, it's fine. And time to test. No waist swivel on this guy. No waist swivel, which was a weird one, because Goose, their skydive, had waist swivel, but kind of only just, and only to the one side. So that was a bit of a weird one. And I guess it's sort of the inherent nature of the designs. I guess maybe I'd need to investigate, but maybe you can unclip all of that. I'm sure someone in the comments will tell me if I'm wrong, but maybe you can unclip all of that and kind of get a bit of waist swivel. I don't know. I'll need to investigate and see, which I'm sure we'll discover. But there he is, just kind of quickly posed up. And I think he looks really good, I have to say. I think that looks really, really nice. Just in terms of, the look, the way it captures the character, I think that's really, really decent. I'm looking forward to taking some proper photos with this guy, really getting cracking with him in terms of posing him up, figuring out if there is indeed a waist swivel or anything of that kind. But certainly he doesn't feel overly fiddly or what have you. So yeah, first impressions of the robot mode are very decent. Certainly got the look and the finish that a lot of FansToys collectors will be expecting, I'm sure. Right, so just had a little bit of a fiddle with him off camera there and can confirm, yeah, there's no way swivel, which, yeah, it's a bit of an oversight. I don't know. Maybe they just figured it couldn't be done, but it does feel like a bit of a shame, it's fair to say. Not a deal breaker, but certainly in terms of posing, it does limit quite a lot of the sort of more extreme poses that you might be looking to create. And I don't know, in this year of 2020, it feels like not many masterpiece styled toys come without a waist swivel anymore. So yeah, make of that what you will. I mean, I'm sure that people are going to have plenty to say about that, but no waist swivel indeed. What I did forget to mention, and I will do just quickly now, of course, is the face swap, which looks to be, oh, there we go, fairly straightforward. It just pops off, and the angry face or shouting face, whatever you want to call it, pops straight on again. There we go. And looks pretty good. Yeah, certainly looks like he's angry. So that's that's what you're looking for from these kinds of accessories. I have to say, it's nice to see FansToys sort of embracing a bit more these days of the user friendliness of some of these designs, because you know, back in the day, things like Sovereign and what have you, great, you know, really nice looking toys, but just not practical when you have to be unscrewing head sculpts and things like that in order to swap out faces. You just never want to do that. That's the thing. So, right, let's go ahead and do a few comparisons with this guy just to see how he looks versus a few other masterpiece styled figures. So really excited to see how he shapes up. So firstly, we'd be remiss if we didn't line him up next to the likes of MP44. So Masterpiece Optimus Prime, there we go. And they look pretty good. I mean, actually, he's very tall. That's the first thing to say about him. Way taller than you might be anticipating from a Masterpiece Aerialbot. I don't know. Obviously, there's an element of them being planes versus cars. So, you know, I'm sure that comes into play when designing these things. But yeah, he's certainly a big guy, definitely. Looks really, really big versus MP44. We also have him in comparison to Masterpiece Ironhide. There we go. And again, looks, I mean, he's taller than Ironhide, so an Ironhide's a big guy, a big toy. So that gives you a decent idea of how he shapes up there. It's going to be quite something seeing all 5 of these next to one another. On that score, let's go ahead and move him along a bit. Maybe I should keep him on there. Oops. Yeah, he's still tilting backwards. I'll move this guy over a little bit, just to the side, just there, and we'll bring in Maverick, who is FansToys' attempt at a Silverbolt, and he really is big. But interesting to see that the limb guys, aka Iceman here, are not too much smaller than Maverick, so there's not that much height differential. So that's kind of cool, and I think a lot of cartoon fans will really like that. And they look really solid together, it's fair to say. Nice colours, working well. Similar kind of pearly quality to the whites here as on Maverick, although a more brilliant white on him, whereas on Maverick there's this sort of off-white quality going on. Real, like, more of a pearl colour, and that's more of a brilliant white. So interesting to see. Yeah, but Ironhide looking quite small there. Wow, that's quite surprising to see. Let's bring in Wheeljack, just to give you another view. That's a Masterpiece Carbot size, obviously. And then why don't we get in another recent FansToys release. Here's Sheridan, their Warpath, which is another solid bot. Gives you a good idea. And then, just because Ironhide's feeling a bit small, we'll pop in on the end here. Masterpiece Bumblebee, the most recent one, MP45. So really nice lineup, and you know, it's going to be quite something to see all 5 Aerialbots as part of this lineup. It's going to be quite the I don't know what to say, but quite the space taken up on your shelf is the reality of it. Not that that's necessarily the way to think of these things. It is exciting, but yeah, there's a lot of real estate, shelf real estate gone right there with this one set of bots, which should be interesting. But yeah, to my eye, it works. Obviously, still quite a different finish with FansToys products to Takara ones. That's nothing new, but you know, it gives you an idea all the same. Just out of interest, just to bring in an oldie but a goodie, someone like Scoria, who I still really love this toy. It's still a favourite third-party purchase of mine. I know these days it's quite hard to find, and of course they did a new one, Cesium, but this to me is still the best, has to be said. But yeah, that looks really, really good. Quite interesting to see that actually the Aerialbots are very sizable, even in comparison to their Dinobots. Some may say that the Dinobots should be bigger, you know, scale chart, all of that malarkey. Really depends how you feel about that, but that's the size that they are. And actually Maverick, I'll be honest, I've never even noticed this before, but Maverick here is actually taller than Scoria, which is, you know, head height, which is really quite, maybe a bit unusual, but it is what it is. Interesting to see, all the same. Let's bring in a couple more bots, just for a few more comparisons, a few more FansToys products as well. There we go. There's FansToys, trying to remember all their names, Coot, and FansToys Jabber, which is their Cup and Blur. Yeah, a bit taller than the old traditional Masterpiece Carbots, but there you go. Gives you a good idea. And then we also have FansToys Rouge. There she is. Bit of a FansToys family going on, and then MP44. So just to give you a good idea. But yeah, definite variance in height going on with some of these guys. Interesting to see. And then maybe we'll get rid of Scoria. And then just to, oops. And then we'll bring in one of my personal favorites, MP9. There you go. Just for a bit of a, in fact, if we get rid of Optimus, then you've got a fully 2005, 2006 style vibe going on. The new crew, as it were. Of course, the Aerobot's still part of that. And that looks really good again. So really, really like that and how that's shaped up. Okay, so let's take these guys out. There's a couple more comparisons I want to do, because I think this is quite an interesting one, height-wise. So it's definitely worth seeing how they shape up. Put those guys to one side. I think what is interesting to see is this guy, Make Toys Meteor, who, you know, a lot of people have as their Masterpiece Starscream, or maybe a lot of people want to have as their Masterpiece Starscream. It can be quite hard to find now. Yeah, some of the aftermarket prices that I see on him now, just ridiculous. But there you go. Anyway, that's how they shape up. So, and of course, Meteor here is roughly Masterpiece Seeker height as well. So it gives you a good indication of how they stack up there. Obviously, it's a weird one because really they're very tall versus these guys as well. We'll need to see how tall the new Masterpiece Seeker mold is that's coming up soon. But yeah, definitely quite a big height difference between those guys as well. So that's interesting to see. Let's pop Meteor to one side. And then last couple of comparisons that I want to do are, of course, we want to see versus this guy, which is, oops, if I can get him to stand. I think his feet's gone a little bit in the wrong position. There we go. FansToys Spoiler, which is their breakdown. And it's interesting because everyone's saying, oh yeah, the Stunticons, their Stunticons are going to be taller to match the Aerialbots, and they're going to be at eyeline. That, my friends, is not at eyeline. That's not what eyeline is. So I cannot tell you how many people have said to me, that's why these guys are taller, is to match them. And am I missing something? Because that doesn't line up at all. But I mean, to be fair, it looks good, and obviously comparatively, they are, you know, they are coming up closer to these guys, but these fellas are really tall. So, you know, someone will say it's scale chart accurate to me, I'm sure. And fair enough, maybe it is. I'm not too worried, but really it's up to you to decide how good this looks. For my money, they look nice, so I'm not complaining. And here's just, I showed this guy in my Magnum review as well, which you should check out if you haven't seen it. But here is Unique Toys Archimond, who is their Brawl. And it's just to give another indication of, you know, another third-party Limbot, combiner Limbot, and how he shapes up. And he looks now pretty small by comparison, which is just funny because, of course, you know, when I first got these guys, the Unique Toys Combaticons, it was like, well, hey, they're really big. And now, you know, as time moves on and new toys come in, you think, yeah, they're not that big after all. But let's just throw in a couple more just to see. And of course, it's interesting to compare with a couple of X-Transbots Stunticons. So of course, let's just put FansToys breakdown at the front there. So, you know, we talked about this again in the Magnum review, the fact that the X-Transbot Stunticons are much smaller, and these guys are Masterpiece Carbot size. These guys are much taller, kind of more Seeker size, you know, Masterpiece Seeker size. And that's just to show you how that looks. So if you are going in on FansToys Aerialbots and X-Transbot Stunticons, that's what you can expect. Maybe that doesn't work for you. Maybe you think that's too much of a height differential. I don't know, but there you go. Okay, so, you know, in terms of comparisons, for my money, I think it's all kind of comes down to how you feel about the height of the Aerialbots here, because they are really tall, really, really tall. They're a big set, and maybe that will play well for combined mode. We don't know yet, but you know, really, it depends on your feelings of, is that too large? Does that work for you? Are you happy with them being taller because they're jets? Really, it's up for you to decide. Anyway, so one thing I did just neglect to mention from the robot mode was that actually these wings pull up slightly and are, of course, supposed to fold and fan out like that for the robot mode. So yeah, indeed, that's the proper look as you would get from the instructions, and indeed a bit more accurate to the cartoon model as well. Of course, you can have them folded back like I had them if you really prefer. Doesn't necessarily help with stability any, because as you see, little push on him and he'll still topple backwards. Not I'm going to actually let him fall, but yeah, that's the wings are supposed to be out to the sides, just like that. So there we go. Right, well, we're going to take a look at transformation now. And you know, as I've done with some of my my previous videos, my more recent ones, we're actually going to speed it up for this video to keep things moving. But what I'll do is I'll publish a separate video at normal speed so that you can see the transformation in detail should you wish. Now, this is the first time I've attempted it, so it'll be interesting to see how we get on. So here we go. Okay, that's transformation done. And in case you're not going to watch my my transformation video, I'll give you the too long didn't read version. But that was not particularly a fun process, it's fair to say. A little bit arduous at times. Particularly, there's a few clearance issues along the way. I would say particularly this cockpit section here, which is all one piece, leading down to a hinge joint just here in the middle. And I mean, it says in the instructions to push down, you know, with some force. I think it says use quite a bit of strength or what have you, but that is really, really unnecessary how much force is required there. And actually, I would say that's more force than I've had to use on any toy I can think of in recent memory. So that's really quite bizarre. The issue is again, it's clearance. There's a couple of little tabs just inside here at the hinge, which just simply don't have enough room to go down. I mean, it helps if you do it kind of at exactly the right angle. You have to be very specific. But even then, the amount of force required is just a bit crazy. I mean, it took me several attempts, lube going everywhere as well off this thing, which doesn't help when you're trying to apply pressure. But really, a crazy amount of force required. So that was not fun. So you know, needless to say. And then this bit at the back. I mean, I will say it's quite clever how it all comes together, but this bit at the back is quite specific in terms of which bits move where, what have you. There's another long joint that connects the back section, and then these bits, these panels, you have to kind of move out the way in order to collapse that over the top. I mean, it's not particularly complicated in theory, but the clearance required is very tight, and it's, I would say overall, it's not a fun transformation, personally speaking. It's not as bad as some FansToys efforts. It's not as bad as Jabba, for example, and you know, a few of their other toys which really are just, you know, a bit beyond the pale. But it's nowhere near as smooth as something like Magnum, which we just took a look at, you know, in another recent video. But you can't argue with the result. And to be fair, the last, I would say, 30 seconds or so of transforming this are remarkably satisfying, because suddenly it all comes together and actually it tabs really nicely and looks very flush. So there's a nice Generally pretty smooth, finish to it as well. All of the different panels sit quite nicely. It does tab together well. So that's something. Props to them for that, at least. And the result is really nice, I have to say. I think it looks very, very good in jet mode. Really makes quite the impression. Kind of reminds me of the first Masterpiece Seekers in some ways, MP3, the MP3 mold, just in terms of the detail, how real world it looks, all of that. So really, really nice, paneling, detailing on the top here. And they've made a really good effort to kind of make that feel cohesive across different seams. A few gaps in the wings just here at the hinges, as you can probably see, but it's not a deal breaker by any means. They've also done a really nice job with this paint on the wings here. That looks great, particularly the way it carries off over different seams, different panels. So that's good. Props to them for that. The color is really nice too. It's not quite black, and actually you can see the cockpit section here. That's true black, if anything, whereas this is more of a very, 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 very dark grey with a kind of sparkly quality to it. But it looks probably better for it, a bit more interesting than just being straight up black. From a side view and from the back, it's all pretty tidy, actually, I would say. Even from the underneath, which, I mean, would you call that robot kibble? I don't really know, to be fair. I guess you could say that that's robot kibble, but realistically, that's about as tidy a jet mode as you're going to get with any, Masterpiece style toy like this. I think that's a pretty good effort, really, on their part. It would have been impossible to hide all of that. And to be fair, it shrinks down quite nicely, I think. So overall, I think that looks pretty spectacular, I have to say. So yeah, obviously what I haven't done yet is fold out the landing gear. So you can just do that pretty simply right there. 2 wheels, and then this one up front. There we go. Despite having broken a nail, that's during transformation, that's still quite easy to do. Did indeed break a nail. There we go. So yeah, that looks, obviously with the landing gear deployed, that looks great. Very, very happy with how that looks. You can then also attach his 2 robot mode guns. You just quite simply tab them in like that, and the other one, and then they connect on the underside. Just plug into the bottom of his wings for the full look. There we go. That's him all done up in jet form. You can also open the cockpit somehow. Now this is where a non-broken fingernail is probably handy. There we go. So there is a little real-world cockpit in there. That looks really cool, actually. I really like that detailing. In terms of Masterpiece cockpits, I think actually that looks really, really nice, I have to say. Really, really like it. I do happen to have with me little MP10 Spike. There he is. I guess you could say that's probably about the size that a human should be. He's a little bit tall, a little bit too big. I don't think he's going to go in there, let's be fair. I'd be surprised. You could try with the more articulated later. No, there's no room for his feet. No, he's never going to go in there. Never going to fit in there. Maybe in the back there, you could kind of lie him down like that. Oops, like that. There you go. Perfect. Absolutely seamless, that is. Yeah, no, he's too big. You could try with a more articulated later Spike figure from MP44, but that thing's a nightmare. You'd have arms and legs popping around all over the place. So yeah, anyway, you get the idea. So really like that jet mode. Overall, think it's very, very cool. Let's do a quick comparison in the jet form. And of course, we have, he was absent from robot mode, but we have Goose just here for the jet mode comparison. Just get them both in the shot. There we go. You can see them both together just there. And I have to say, I think they look really, really nice together. Really like it. I mean, this is going to be quite the impressive set when you see all 5 jets together, it has to be said. Going to be massive, absolutely massive. I think actually, if anything, between the two, I think this guy actually takes it for me. I really like Goose, and I think he looks great in jet mode. Big fan, especially of the lightning bolt on his wings, and this electric blue on his rear fin. I think looks absolutely cracking. Really, excuse the pun, but really, really nice. But overall, I think actually Iceman just in terms of how impressive he is, probably takes the biscuit, I think, in this round. But, you know, either way, it's shaping up to be a really, really good set. Can't wait to see it with Fireflight and with Slingshot as well. It's going to be quite magnificent. And just by way of one quick, or maybe two quick other comparisons, here is FansToys Magnum, which we looked at again in a video just the other week. So you can see the old planes versus cars, that's how they're shaping up. Obviously, he's quite a bit smaller, but that's, you know, what you would expect. And we've also got Masterpiece Blue Streak. There you go, just to see how he shapes up as well. So that gives you a good idea. But I think this looks really, really good. So final thoughts on Iceman. Well, I think overall he's pretty good. I really like the robot mode. I think it looks great. The finish is spectacular. Really like the jet mode. Again, you know, it just looks superb. The transformation is not fun. It's fair to say. Way too much force is required to get him from one mode, well, particularly into the jet mode. I haven't tried it the other way yet, but certainly to get him into that jet mode, there's too much force required on that cockpit section especially. And that's just not good engineering, frankly. However, you know what you get with a FansToys product. You get a really nice finish, you get a very accurate sculpt, really nice detailing, and it looks like the character superbly well, really brings it to life. You get a great fit and finish, as I say, you get a really good quality, all of these things. Nice heft, you know, with the diecast and all of that. Typical FansToys positives. And then you get a pretty horrible transformation. So it'll be what a lot of FansToys collectors are probably expecting in that regard. But overall, you know what? It's a toot. So that's FansToys Iceman. Cool stuff indeed. I'll put a link to TF Source's site in the video description, and I'll be aiming to get the full review and loads of photos up on their blog ASAP. Thanks again for watching, and if you haven't yet, then now's a great time to subscribe to the channel and maybe check out my other videos whilst you're at it. Quick final shout out to everyone who already supports me on Patreon. Details are coming up at the end of the video in just a moment. Otherwise, that's it from me, so enjoy the rest of your day. TTFN.